Hello, and welcome to the latest edition of the Intelligent Wealth podcast. Today, I'm very honored to have, along as our guest speaker, Kevin Ludford, who has formed a very interesting British FinTech company called FumoPay, which I'm really looking forward to talking to you about, Kevin. So, hello today. How are you today?
Yeah, hi Tony. Yeah, really well, and really appreciate you inviting me along to chat about
It's
fintech and all other things. I'm sure. So yeah, looking forward to it.
the honour is all ours,
So,
believe you me. Um, anyway, to get started, before we get on to what you're doing today with FumoPay, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about your background. You're growing up, what kind of class were you in? Was it working class, middle class, upper class? What kind of education? That kind of thing.
Mhm.
What kind of growing up? What was growing up like for you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, actually, working class background and parents.
That's good.
Um, Wanted to go on stage and and be a stuntman, but my parents said no. You must get some, form some form of trade or
Uh,
experience. So followed that route initially. Before sort of moving into technology, actually, I got into sales first before moving into
That's
technology.
good. That's good.
So
So what trade did you learn when you were
uh,
younger?
so I'm actually a joiner by trade.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay. That's useful hobby or
time
useful
served
trade.
apprentice joiner. It's been very useful on all the house building projects over the years. But
Sure,
yes, no,
sure.
it was a good
Uh,
good good grounding. Yeah, before moving into
So,
as a sales, a
so,
step into
so you
sales.
said you got into sales first. I always find that quite a very useful life skill, sales, because let's face it, it's the oldest profession, isn't it? Sales. So, what did you learn from that experience?
It is. It's I guess a lot of it is really around reading people and reading
Yes,
situations.
yes,
And I think that's something that bodes well in life in general, really. But I guess equally that actually you can create your own opportunities
yes.
from very little, really. So it's been I think a really good grounding. I think you often pick up a lot of the skills that you pick up you just sort of just take for granted, or they suddenly become intuitive when you've been doing it
Yes, of
for
course.
many years. So
Yeah. And
um,
what do you think's the what do you think is the major skill of sales? What's the major way to do it?
listening is definitely one. So I
Listening,
always
absolutely.
say I have three teenage boys, and it's the old adage of one of these, two of them. Let people
Yeah,
talk. And let them keep talking, and you'll find more information out about them and in situations. So um,
spot on,
of, of,
spot on.
often
Yeah,
people want to tell you what you're thinking, so to speak. So
yeah. There is
um,
a kind of stereotypical image of a top salesman or woman being a great talker,
mm,
but in fact, the opposite is true. The
absolutely,
greatest salespeople I've ever met are the ones with the greatest listeners. And when you
yes,
think about it, it's logical because, as you say, Kevin, you learn more about them, and unless you learn about the person, how can you sell them something that's appropriate to them?
indeed, yeah.
Um,
And I always say, less is more. I
mm,
always realised that I keep throwing these comments out to my sons, all in their sort of early and mid 20s, and
yes,
it's again, these are inherent skills that I think you pick up, and
yeah.
therefore, being able to read people and I guess situations has been really useful, really
Yeah.
over the career.
I don't know about you. I've also found also being honest
Mm,
and authentic
mm.
and not misleading people. I find you build a lot of trust, don't you? And then repeat business.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, generally, a lot of, I guess, good sales related relationships are built around, a shared experience or share, as you say,
Yes.
shared trust.
Yes.
I guess you learn very quickly to be open and honest. But I think when one of the businesses that I founded, the company called Event Commerce, ultimately we were there to deliver projects, and
Yeah.
therefore it sits on your shoulders. So there's absolutely no point in making something up,
No.
and you can only be honest with your customers. Otherwise, ultimately, it's going to come back, come and
Well,
backfire on you.
this is it. That's why I've always felt that's really important, because well, personally, I believe in karma, but it's not for everybody. But what goes around comes around,
Yep.
and if you're honest and open, you build trust, and you get far more business in the long run from existing customers than just trying to make a quick sale, a quick buck, and line your own pockets. People distrust you and never use you again, so it's pointless, really. You might as well be honest.
Yes, it's interesting. I always say, no matter how many marketing campaigns and activities that you do, majority of your good business comes through your network and your
Yes.
relationships,
Oh,
and
yes.
and that's true. Every time, maybe we're looking at a new project or
Yeah.
new spend, it's like, well, you've got to do these. There's certain activities that you need to do in the industry, but ultimately is the network and referrals and
Absolutely. Yeah.
trust that you're building. So
Couldn't agree more. So, Kevin, when did you give up being employed and start your first business? And what business was it?
well, bizarrely enough, my very, very first business was actually a rally school, if you can believe that.
Really?
So
Sounds
I have a
great.
bit of a passion for motorsport.
Uh-huh.
Got into rally driving when I was quite young,
Yeah.
and I did a little bit of instructing at a couple of the rally schools, sort of locally to where I'm
Uh-huh.
based in Milton Keynes, and decided to form a rally school. So at the
Fantastic. Yeah.
early 20s, that was my first opportunity, sort of alongside I guess working, but yeah, it was an opportunity to go and do something that I really enjoyed but make no money.
Mm.
so so
So big lesson learned there then.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really, really good sort of first experience. But having to sit alongside, and I often think, customers used to look at this sort of young, sort of 20-something-year-old sat alongside them as an instructor as you're hooning through a forest stage, going,
Yeah.
to see, is he really the guy that should be sat next to me?
Yeah. I'm not going to live, I'm not going to survive. Because, of
But
course, young males are the biggest insurance risk, aren't they, for driving? Because they tend to be more adventurous and a bit less afraid than female drivers. So I suppose that fits the stereotype, doesn't it?
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot quieter than on the roads, and but
Yeah.
I was fortunate to be able to sort of put my passion into a sport, and therefore,
Yes.
didn't need to hoon around the lanes. When
So,
you could actually
so
do
what
it.
was the big thing you learned then from running that business? Because you did mention you weren't making any money. Was that what you learned? What was the biggest lesson?
To be honest, it was this is sort of pre-internet,
Right.
the sort of social marketing that you can do, obviously deliver today. So
Hmm.
yeah, a lot of it was really around how the time and energy to try and build a brand or presence
Yes.
within an existing market space.
Yeah.
Needed to be really efficient, but equally, if we can deliver a great service to those first customers, they're then referring you onto their network and contacts. So we'd actually get a lot of referral business through that,
Right.
which was really
So,
good. So
so
make that experience. Uh, how do we, as a small unknown brand, set ourselves apart from one or two of the traditional sort of go to players in the
mm,
market? How can we deliver a greater experience for them and deliver better value, shall we say?
uh, yeah, that's great. I think that is something that small businesses generally can offer far more than big businesses,
mm,
because it's your whole livelihood. You don't have a brand. You have to focus on customer service. And that seems to be a
yep,
great lesson you
yep,
learned there,
yeah,
which has
yeah.
helped you move forward. So when did you first go into full-time self-employment, full-time
Uh,
running your own
yeah,
business?
so I would say 2011 was when I founded Invent Commerce. So I guess prior to that, moved into sales and into sort of tech sales, and got into sort of e-commerce and digital industry, sort of quite
Right.
early on. So the early days of e-com
Okay.
projects, and the yeah I'd been running I was European CEO for a North American consulting firm in that sort of digital arena, and initially brought in to help them launch a sort of SaaS-based commerce platform.
Right.
So they were they shared the same PE firm that currently invested in a company called Demandware, which later became got acquired by Salesforce. And the board wanted effectively to try and create sort of an open source product equivalent, and so joined that. Unfortunately spent a little bit more time firefighting in digital consultancy and customer projects than being able to focus on a productized solution,
Right.
And therefore felt actually I could do a better job myself creating
So when was that then?
the business. So that was in 2011.
So what was the name of the company you first
so
formed?
the business was called Invent Commerce.
Event Commerce.
Invent
Commerce.
Yes.
Okay. Did you make a success of that business?
Yes. Well, to a point we got acquired.
Did it make money?
Yeah. We made money. We actually got acquired within 5 years by a French-based, publicly listed PLC.
Fabulous.
Much bigger than ourselves. Clearly, we didn't invent commerce. I just want to make that clear for the listeners. But we just spent a lot of time, and again, it comes back to that early point of being, open and transparent.
Yes.
We spent time helping brands establish, an online e-commerce presence. And in fact, it was the first segue into the launch of FumoPay, because one of the areas that we found a little bit of a niche in was building payment gateway integrations for a number of the global PSPs. So, they were really good at providing the gateway technology. The e-commerce platform was focused very much on building that shopping cart and customer experience. But actually, there was that connectivity between the two. And that's an area that we suddenly found a little bit of a niche in building those on behalf of the gateways, because we really understood the commerce element, the technology, the user journey, user experience side of the overall value chain that's required for a customer. So.
Now, the place I met you was, I think it's called Unity Place, Santander's new national headquarters in Milton Keynes, where you gave a presentation with another sort of challenger bank, really. You're a FinTech business, but they're a challenger bank called Alica Bank.
Yeah.
And you hosted this very nice event, a fantastic venue, and explained how FumoPay works. And myself being a fund manager for a company called Minerva Money Management, and we run our own fund, the Intelligent Wealth Fund, and we invest in FinTech, and we're big flag carriers for British companies. We think there's a lot of fantastic technology companies in Britain, but they're often kind of back in the background. They're not high profile like the likes of Google or Microsoft, but then nonetheless, we've still got a lot of really good technological companies. And in FinTech, I think we're the second largest FinTech industry in the world. So I was very fascinated by your presentation, and I think FumoPay sounds very interesting. So could you explain in simple to understand language to the non-techs listening, what exactly is FumoPay and how does it work?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're an open banking payment provider.
Right.
I guess a little bit of industry background. In 2018, there was an initiative launched really to demonopolize the sort of banking industry and force them to open up access to banking systems and banking data effectively.
Yes.
Really to allow firms like ourselves, so regulated firms, so we're regulated with the Financial Conduct Authority, as what's known as an authorized payment institution. And it was to allow firms like ourselves to really bring innovation to the market, really, both to consumers and also to businesses, by leveraging banking data, banking information, customer information. So in essence, what FumoPay provide is an alternative payment solution to accepting cards, predominantly accepting cards, but effectively allowing a customer to receive an instant bank payment, which is a secure bank-to-bank payment. And the way that we have built out a platform, so we have built all of our own direct bank integrations to all of the UK supporting banks. And effectively, we then allow customers to take advantage or businesses to take advantage of that by enabling it through examples such as we demoed in that session. I can add a pay by bank button on my Xero invoice as an example.
Yeah.
So when the customer receives that, they haven't got to go and set me up as a payee. They haven't got to go and enter any data. They can simply click on the pay by bank button, pick their bank, authorize that payment. So it's a much faster, secure payment mechanism. And therefore, that payment mechanism can be enabled, whether that's an invoice, can be on e-commerce, it can be on a simple QR code like we have there. We also have it on a business app to replace these sort of mobile card readers. So it's really about trying to reduce the traditional processing and payment fees that businesses face. It's also about improving cash flow, because it's an instant payment.
Yes.
And also, reducing elements such as card fraud, chargebacks, etc.
Yeah. Can I ask you, to the ignorant out there, including me, I'm sitting here thinking, why would I bother with FumoPay and not just do a faster payment through my bank? What's the advantage of FumoPay over the faster payment?
So ultimately, it runs as a faster payment. Okay, so the mechanism that sits underneath is the same. But what you have to look at is, if you're a business and so I'm going to send Tony an invoice and you've not paid me before, and I'd really like you to pay that invoice, promptly when you receive it. But we finished the podcast. You're off now out, for a walk around Thurston Lake, and you open up that invoice on your phone. To pay me there and then while you're walking, you'd have to open up your bank app. You've got to go and set me up as a payee. Anyone that's created a payee these days will see that banks are now doing account matching. If you are paying a business, it may prompt you to add a business address. Often we've found that the business address on an invoice is maybe not the match that is on the address that the bank hold when the company was formed, as an example. So you've got to go through that process, and you want to get that green tick. You want to get the green tick that says the account matches, and if it's red, you're like, do you know what? I'm gonna delay that. Even if you have me as a payee, you've got to again open up your bank app. You've got to find me in your exhaustive list of payees, and then you've got to enter the sort code. You've then got to enter the invoice number and the amount. And therefore, what people do, because we're inherently lazy, people will put that, they won't do it there and then because they've got to do something. Okay, we call that payer friction. So imagine the scenario that when you opened up that invoice, all you had to do was pick your bank, Face ID to approve that payment, and carry on your walk. And you could do that in seconds. And that's really one of the biggest drivers. It's about removing that friction and thinking about putting the customer first in terms of what they need to do to pay you, if that helps.
Kevin, I really understand it better now. And I think that's a tremendous benefit, because when you think about it, I was on a marketing course once, and a young Asian guy stood up. He was a genius, and he said, there's three things customers want. They want it to be fast, simple, and cheap.
Yep.
And I think you meet all three criteria. We're going to come on to fees in a moment, because I know it's a very low cost for FumoPay as well. But I think that idea, going back to what you said earlier, how you learned the importance of customer service, you're basically solving a problem. And I totally agree with you. I think it's a complete faff how long it takes in a modern age to make a payment. I mean, in some way, sometimes it works out. It would have been quicker and cheaper to have written a check out and stuck it in an envelope and posted it sometimes, because it can take forever. And that's why companies like Amazon are so good, because they make it so quick and easy to pay.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's
So I
two
think
sides.
it's really, I think you're onto something very big here, in my view.
There's two sides to it, as you mentioned. Why not do a faster payment? And honestly, my first, when we present this, we always say to customers, at the cheapest and the low cost way is just get to have somebody set you up as a payee and send a faster payment. Totally get that. What we're looking at is all the people that don't pay you on time.
Yes.
And that's on a bank transfer. You then got to think about cards. So if you think about card processing, like these things, you're never going to beat a tap and go. So
Yes.
we always say to people, think of the payment journey and the payment scenario that you're in. If I'm queuing up and I want to grab a coffee quickly and I want to get in and out, I
Yes.
don't want to face ID and pick my bank, even though it's not an onerous journey. Cards are designed to be really quick, but
Yes.
equally, if I've and I think the sort of pandemic / post pandemic era with the QR codes, being much more prevalent. Where I would always find it frustrating is, you go into that pub or restaurant, you scan the QR code, you place your order, you get right all the way through to the checkout, and then the app doesn't accept Apple Pay, and therefore you've got to type in your card details, and
Mm.
it's just friction. So anywhere where you've got to still
Agreed.
enter
Yeah.
the card data is a friction for the customer. But then also think about the merchant. If I make a card payment today, I'm not going to see that cash for X days, T plus however many days before I get those fees. Then I'm going to get those fees then I'm going to get that deposit less my transaction fees.
Mm.
Versus I can get an instant payment as soon as I'm paid. So
Mm.
businesses will also look at just that sort of liquidity improvement of having cash in that business much faster, equally reducing some of that reconciliation time that you have with cards. And cards,
Mm.
card fees continue to increase. So there's actual benefits directly, if you're in a business that
Yeah.
typically transacts with cards.
'Cause I think your fees are actually quite low, aren't they? It's a very low cost alternative to other payment methods. I think
We
particularly PayPal.
Predominantly, yeah, PayPal, Stripe. I mean, we come up against these guys, daily, really. And what we've tried to do is sort of change the model a little bit and move away from the sort of typical percentage transaction fee that the
Yeah.
card schemes. So card schemes are built on the scheme fee. They sort of call it interchange plus plus because there's fees that are loaded on top of the scheme fee. And we've tried to change that model, so we remove that sort of
Mm.
percentage transaction element for
Mm.
businesses, because ultimately, I guess open banking was about bringing benefit to businesses, and
Mm.
therefore it's in you know it's almost like we feel that we need to educate and ensure that businesses are taking advantage of that and actually see that benefit
Yeah.
from
Well, I can see the benefits to businesses, and I particularly think it's fantastic. You got this link to Xero, which is a very, very popular accounting and bookkeeping
Mm,
package for businesses, increasingly taking over from Sage, I
mm,
feel. So that's a really great innovation. But I remember when I was at your presentation, you showed this like payment someone was making, and you could have like down when I give you the options, like down the right hand side, it says PayPal, it says credit card,
mm,
and under it had a FumoPay link, which I
mhm.
thought was quite neat. It would be, I mean, your dream would be to have that for every payment anyone ever makes to anybody, because then it'd be picking you up all the time, wouldn't you? So
It,
well, that was pretty good.
yeah, it would be great. In fact, interestingly, we don't tend to present the FumoPay name at in a checkout journey.
Right, right,
So we sort of adopted the Pay by Bank label,
right, right,
which is also adopted by many organisations,
right.
because ultimately, again, it comes back to that sort of trust element, and equally, you know, certainly from a consumer checkout
Yeah,
perspective, they're conditioned to pay by card. Suddenly they
yes,
see this name of a brand they've never heard of, then
I see.
it's unlike, why we just select that.
Yeah.
If I'm presented with pay by card and pay by bank, and I've made a pay by bank experience before, or purchase, then I potentially may adopt that. So particularly within the sort of consumer sort of retail world, a lot of the focus is looking at how do you convert that pay by card customer to take advantage of pay by bank, and therefore some of that will be driven by that merchant and their incentive to make that switch, because obviously it's in the merchant's benefit to have the customer move
Yeah.
across to pay by bank over pay by card.
And I can see the benefit for businesses in particular, because it appears that businesses seem to be your main target, but they're not the only target, because you do have quite a good offering for individuals as well, don't you? And is there something like called social? Is it social banking where you can share payments and so on? Could you tell us a bit about that? What you do for individuals, including that kind of social banking?
Yeah,
I've called
in
it.
fact, FumoPay actually first launched as a social payment app. So
Right.
the background to the business. So I started looking at open banking as I was coming to the end of the sort of post acquisition of Invent Commerce, and as I mentioned earlier, so I had three boys, one at uni, one on his way to uni, one I think still sleeping most of the time or at school, but. What became quite evident was no matter the budget that you set, the sort of by daily request for additional money, or the fact that within their sort of university cohort, they're often borrowing, lending money between friends.
Yes.
And for small amounts, I was amazed actually how small amounts sometimes they would lend, and then of course
Yeah.
often find it difficult to then get that pound back or however much it was. So the first iteration of Fumo actually was our social app, and so what we've created, and it still exists today, is a sort of social. We used to call it social money, and it was really trying to help young adults manage their money much better. But equally, if they are borrowing, lending, being able to do that in a managed environment that is bank agnostic. So the way that the app worked would, again, we're both at uni. Tony, you need to borrow a £5 off me, so you can request that on the social app. I send you an instant payment using Pay by Bank over to you, and then I can track that I've paid you, and then you can either pay me back, I can nudge you back for the money, and then we extended that in to provide a group function. So so we actually launched it first as a social payment app, and and that was really helpful. Also, just to understand the open banking payment journeys from a consumer perspective. How are they adopted? What makes sense? What doesn't? What would we need to do? So I'd love to think at some point the social app would grow and have a sort of a life of its own, and it was a sort of first step into I guess open banking payments really.
So it strikes me this business has got a tremendous potential to grow. I mean, how is it going in terms of, I don't know, how many sort of really big customers have you taken on? What kind of level of transactions per month? Are you break even yet? Are you profitable yet? I know you just employ a small team currently. How's it all going? You don't have to release trade secrets here, by the way. But just give me a feel for how you're doing.
Yeah, no, really good. Yeah, so we've I guess a couple of years back when we sort of started launching the business, so we knew that we would move to a more of a B2B product offer than the social space. So as you say, we launched what we call sort of multi-platform approach. So for a sole trader, they can use our business app as an example. So everyone that has a mobile card reader can also have a business app, and they can take those instant payments. But actually what we were looking at is channels to sell to really sell through. So we were doing sort of direct merchant acquisition. But one of the channels that's become really, really successful and working really well for us is through our accounting partners. So what we sort of launched really only this year, And in fact, March was our sort of first expose into really a dedicated offer to accounting partners. So we did 3 trade shows between March and June. Over that period, we've now signed, I think, just over 50 accounting firms.
Wow.
Some of those are Xero award-winning firms. We've got a number that are in the top 100. We're now looking to close some that are in the top 50,
Right.
and it's a really nice partnership because what we're really trying to help the accounting partners with is ultimately helping their clients. So what we
Yes.
find with the accounting firms is they do an amazing job around, taxation, company accounting,
Yeah.
all of the elements that you would expect from an accounting partner, but often very little when it comes to helping their clients actually
Yes.
get paid faster, reducing their debtor days.
Yes.
And there's some horrible statistic. I think it's about 1.6 billion pounds that was quoted in terms of cost of the impact on late payments for small businesses.
Yeah.
So being able to help them help their clients has been a really good channel for us. So
Yeah.
that's grown really well. We're now looking at other channels that we can expand out into, and partly because we're sort of extending our payment capability, adding functionality such as the ability to incentivize early payment, the
Yes.
ability to actually split a payment, um, the ability to make maybe a decision on that installment based on access of bank data that we have. So yeah, really exciting. Not break even yet. Privately, we have 3 private investors,
Uh-huh.
but we've got a pretty good trajectory for the next 12 months
Excellent. Yeah.
in terms of our road ahead, really. So yeah,
Yeah. It
lots to
does
do.
take time to build, doesn't it?
It's
It's small acorns, big oak trees and that. I think you'll get
yeah,
there. I think it'll be a big success. I'm
yeah.
convinced of it.
Have a couple
'Cause
of
it got
exciting
my
things
attention
this year.
immediately.
Sorry.
The obvious one you want to have a partnership with, you may already have it, is Xero.
Yeah, so we are a Xero partner. So we are an accredited app within the Xero sort of app stack.
Right.
So that's worked really well for us.
That's good. That's good.
But there's obviously it's a large growing marketplace, particularly
Yes.
within that space. But it's just one channel. There's some other
Yeah.
exciting channels that we're looking at. We also have a planned launch with a retail chain this year as well,
Fantastic.
which we're
Yeah.
looking forward to. And again, it's really about trying to bring open banking or the open banking sort of pay by bank mechanism to a much larger
Yeah.
audience, really. So,
Yeah, I've been a big fan of open banking since it was introduced. And I personally really love this personal finance app called Money Hub.
mhm. Mm,
They use open banking.
yeah,
You can literally have all your bank accounts on that app, and other investments and mortgages and so on. And using API, it just updates daily,
yeah,
really, and it's just fabulous. And it gives you all your income and expenditure all analysed. Just so I love API. I
yeah.
think it's open banking. I just think it's so good.
Yeah, it's
Um,
the first, I guess, the first iteration. So what's been amazing in the UK is that we've really leaded the charge in terms of open banking adoption and
yeah,
innovation. The UK has been far the global leader really in bringing
yeah,
this standard out, and um, obviously Europe very close in terms of, and they I guess in Europe there's been multiple payment methods before, products like
mm,
Soforth and pay on demand in certain geographies. A real shame we're not in the EU, because we would take advantage of the SEPA faster payment rails
mm,
now, so we could do sub 10-second payments across any EU
mm.
currency. But that's another story.
It- so,
But
so do you have plans? Sorry to interrupt. Do you have
sure.
plans to go international with your service?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we definitely Europe. The US is a big market for us to look at. Still very early in its infancy in terms of open banking,
Yes.
and bringing those sort of standards in.
Y-
But ultimately, where we'd love to be at is not only that sort of geographical growth, but equally then being able to support that cross border transaction.
Yes,
And I
that's a
think
big
that
market
that's
as
one of
well,
the
isn't it?
I guess one of the ultimate goals with
Yeah,
open banking cross border, that the ability to do that, sort of instant cross border payment, reducing
it's
things
so
like FX,
necessary.
yeah,
It's so necessary to
fees,
have
yeah.
that. It's just so. The thing is interesting. America's a very interesting country because we always think of it being tremendously technologically advanced,
Mm,
but when you get out there, in some ways, they're really backward.
mm,
I went to Omaha to the Berkshire shareholders meeting to Warren Buffett and all that,
mm,
and most places, most shops and restaurants you went to, they when you went to pay with a card, they wouldn't just allow you just to scan it. They printed out a bill and a
mm.
receipt, and you had to sign it.
Yep, yep.
And so I jokingly said a few times to them, "Oh, haven't you heard of Apple Pay?" And of course
Mm.
they said, "Oh, of course we did. We invented it." But it's so backward. It's so slow and old fashioned. I just find it remarkable. Whereas it's very easy to knock the British, but we're actually brilliant at this and very advanced.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have such a vast network, a fast banking network as well. Really, so
Yes,
adoption, will take some time. But I think
true.
what you have is the scale. That's the I guess. So we expect that there will be parties out there that may build a sort of connectivity platform as a standard
Mm,
first. There'll be certain
yeah.
banks that will clearly adopt this
Mm,
type of payment mechanism earlier. But yeah, we're again really excited by it. I think there's a couple of markets that we're really keen to look at
really good.
and
Yeah.
expand into.
Kevin, so what I need to ask you, I know what you entrepreneurs are like because I'm one of them. What do you do in your spare time if you actually have any?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a bit of a petrol head.
That's good.
So I yeah, cars, motorsport related. I
Really?
actually a sort of side hustle. Actually, I set up about we're actually now in our seventh year. So I created a business called Retail Racing.
Uh-huh.
And we basically connect senior leaders with technology providers based around a racing or motorsport experience.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
typically. Um, uh, yeah, much to my wife's displeasure, I'm either tinkering in the garage on working on a project, or I've been fortunate to do a little bit of racing, or just out sort
Well,
of car related.
the good thing is that busy people like you, that you do understand the importance of taking your mind off of your day-to-day work. I think is so crucially important. And it's good that you keep yourself very busy. I think that's so important for your brain and for your body.
Yeah.
So I commend you on that. That's
Yeah.
really good. Kevin, can I ask you something else? What are your goals? And I don't just mean for business. I mean, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time, for example?
I guess certainly if I think about the FumoPay business, the whole mission of this was, I guess, getting into sort of what I call technology and product sort of fairly early on, and then sort of moving away into more digital consulting. My mission was always to sort of leave this planet whereby I built and brought a product to market that's had an
Yes,
impact.
yes,
Um,
legacy.
whether that's with one or however many people, but at least demonstrate. And I think, as you say, we don't have to do this. Often at
No.
times you say, why didn't I just take that career path? I'm sure my wife thinks that many times. And you sit here trying to figure these things out because they haven't been done yet. But ultimately, just I think certainly in the short term, just seeing the benefit that some businesses have by being able to
Mm,
use a product like
mm,
FumoPay, and we've
yeah.
had some. I think I may have mentioned it in the presentation. The dog grooming lady, small business owner, and just being able to encapsulate that, and I guess look back and demonstrate where this, I guess, seed of an idea, shall we say,
Yes.
has been able to have a real impact on business and people's livelihoods, really. And I guess at a point where we look back and we've scaled this business from two of us to the sort of 8-9 people we are now, to actually something that's been adopted and used on a much broader scale in other geographies, would be amazing to be able to look back at. And then I'd like to then be at a point where actually I could then go and help other businesses, because I always it's like I say to my sons, it's just those nuggets of information, when you're doing these podcasts, when you're listening to podcasts, when you're reading books, what are just those few nuggets that you can share with people that can have a real impact. So
I can see you're very service oriented, and I think it's very rewarding when you run a business and you're helping others, and that gives you a passion to continue and maybe continue indefinitely. So do you have any personal goals? It might be to do with your racing. I don't know. Do you want to build a top rally team or something? I don't know.
Yeah, I'd like, to be at a point where I could get back and have a little bit more time. The problem with it is it's quite time consuming, and therefore you have to go into weekends where you're relaxed and you've got a clear head. And I find it's always a challenge, certainly in the short term, when there's so much going on. And again, as my wife always says to me, there's you're rushing around, and I think one thing with anything, particularly motorsport, nothing ever goes to plan, no matter how meticulously you plan.
I can imagine.
So it would be nice to be at a point where I know that I can take that time to really enjoy the full build up and experience as such.
Would be wonderful.
Nice. But other than that, a few European drives I'd love to go and do. As parts of Europe I'd love to. Haven't yet managed to tick those boxes.
That'd be great. So, it's good that you're a passionate man as well, Kevin. I can see all that. It resonates so much with me. Kevin, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the podcast, but it's been absolutely brilliant. I could talk to you for hours, and hopefully we can follow up after this and build a relationship, hopefully. So all I've got to say is thanks very much for your time today. You've given us a lot of pearls of wisdom there, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So
no, likewise.
I wish you every success with FumoPay. I think it's going to be a storming success. I think you deserve it because you're really someone who's service-oriented.
Thank you, Tony. It's been a pleasure to meet, and look forward to a continued relationship. So
nice to meet you, Kevin. Have a great day.
And you.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us today. Please help us spread the word by sharing this podcast with your family and friends. And don't forget to subscribe.